in this community, so we think that 8 is an excellent location for this type of activity or function within the neighborhood. Number 7, we left open as a neighborhood park, again with the introduction of close to 250 new units. The importance of including active play space for children in the community we felt was a good location for this. This is another version of that includes along this new Riverside Drive connector to Bradley Circle, allows housing to be directly on the side of the Green Park. This is a cross-section that shows, again, the incorporation of this new Riverside Drive connecting to Bradley Circle and allowing this public access mainly was the goal or intent of opening up this roadway view. These are examples of the type of character and scale of housing infill development within the neighborhood that can include loft-like housing types or more traditional in character, building on the vernacular architecture of the Columbus community. And these are also examples of the excellent work that the Housing Authority of Columbus, Georgia has done in their redeveloped communities throughout the city. This is an existing view which shows Open Door, Riverwalk access, and Bradley Circle. And this particular artist rendering shows the new Riverside Drive connecting through to Bradley Circle here. And in this area, including mixed income, mixed finance housing, Open Doors over here. This building here is the community building that I mentioned earlier that provides safe access to the Riverwalk along here. CV4, we'll cover CV4 and 5 next. Johnston Mill revolving around the Mill building. Our focus in this particular area was to look very closely at 2nd Avenue as an important corridor for future commercial redevelopment. Our transportation planning consulting firm looked very closely at both 2nd Avenue, 1st Avenue, and the east-west oriented streets. Particularly along 2nd Avenue, the intent is to be able to incorporate bike lanes and make it more walkable, and in turn being able to redevelop parcels along this particular corridor that can start to open up commercial opportunities within the district. The MA properties, which are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4, currently existing buildings are, like you see here, 35th Street is an important east-west connector at this location, and again, it's the first street that intersects 2nd Avenue and entryway into the district. And 234 shows potential development of the MA property into a series of buildings that have off-street parking and front 2nd Avenue close to the street. This again an existing view with a vacant parcel along 35th and a redeveloped 2nd Avenue at that particular intersection, again before image, vacant property on both sides of 2nd Avenue and providing that gateway, entryway again into the community, bringing buildings close to the street, allowing retail on the ground floor, and 35th Avenue in particular is an important connector out to the whitewater rafting put-out point that exists off of 35th and a side road that is off of 1st Avenue here. And lastly, along the Riverwalk, we do think that there's an opportunity for enhancing this green infrastructure, again, in a character that's very different from what you currently have in Uptown, and being able to support whitewater rafting-related activities, but also biking, lodging, supporting retail, and so forth, and connecting this green infrastructure to a regional system. And these illustrations show, again, opportunities for, given the different character that you have here, possibilities of incorporating this type of activity, particularly surrounding Bradley Circle. This is a final view that shows, again, an aerial image with TSIS located to the right, City Mill in the center, Chase Homes, and Johnston Mill on the northern end of the district. So very quickly, I mentioned earlier that our streetscape plan includes proposals for 2nd Avenue, 1st Avenue, and east-west streets. There's a lot of detail in the final document and a lot of thought that has been given by our AECOM Consulting Transportation Planning team as to the different proposals or improvements along these various streets and corridors. A variety of sections, again, that depending on the existing conditions and width of the right-of-way, allow turning lanes, on-street parking, the incorporation of additional mid-block crossings. Currently, there are only 2 existing traffic signals between the 35th and the railroad tracks on the southern end, and there's a proposal to incorporate additional traffic signals. And again, the intent is to be able to slow down traffic going through this particular corridor and being able to provide very easy access in the east-west direction. As I mentioned earlier, connecting to system-wide bike and trails, pedestrian, providing that connectivity is going to be important. A series of sharrows, but also dedicated bike lanes are proposed within the plan. Touch very quickly on wayfinding. We think it's important.
Grace, we have
as part.
A question from Councilor Woodson.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Grace. I apologize, but I just, I'm trying to look through here and I can't see, and I wanted to see if you can help me
Yes.
identify it, because the portion of the village that I remember walking and talking about, I don't see here. So I don't know if in the maps you can show me. I know that we went on a trip over to Bid City when this was coming up for discussion of City Village. Mm-hmm. And we went through an area, we walked through the neighborhood, we went through it. Right. We identified, the river needing visual more and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure where that is in this plan, because it looks like to me we're like driving away from that. Yeah. And I thought that was the key portion behind this program.
I think the best image would probably be here. The boundaries of the the boundaries of the district are on the southern end. We've got the railroad tracks here.
Yeah, I know that part. I'm looking for the part. Marquette, can you help me? I'm looking.
This area here.
Okay, so from the conversation we had around that area there, the boundaries were extended to go to the boundaries you're saying now? Okay.
The boundaries have always been
okay.
Johnston Mill on the north side and Teese's boundary. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The boundaries have always been Johnston Mill on the north side and Teese's campus on the south side. When y'all came for your tour, we concentrated in the area of Bradley Circle that Grace just, that circle part, that sort of elliptical circle. That's where we actually got out and walked in there. You could see the views of the river, et cetera. And then we came up Riverside Drive and then concentrated on First Avenue, what we were seeing on First Avenue within those boundaries. But the boundaries have always been the same as designated from the very beginning.
Okay, somehow I missed the boundary.
Okay.
And that's why I was asking that. A lot of the presentation and the development and stuff, is some of that housing area, because that was kind of historical in there. What's the plan for that circle area?
Well, let me let Justin address the issue of historical housing.
Which image do you want?
Just that map that you were drawing on is fine.
Oh.
That was fine. The houses found in Bradley Circle, have a little bit of a history compared or connected to the City Mills, the Muskogee Manufacturing Company, and the Johnston Mill Loft development, that site. But as our organization has gone through the area and defined kind of what's contributing and what's not contributing to kind of a historic element, there is honestly not a whole lot outstanding in that neighborhood. We don't really have a desire to move forward with proposing this be a historic district. We don't necessarily feel like that's all that appropriate for the conditions of the stock that's in that neighborhood. Not to mention, there's so much infill that needs to happen in this neighborhood, in this community, that can really help kind of take advantage and create more of an asset to Uptown and Bibb City. But as far as just historic resources, I mean, you've got the two mills that are existing, Johnston Mill and then City Mills. But beyond that, a lot of the very typical mill housing is not that spectacular. It's not near as a cohesive neighborhood as Bibb City is.
However, and I do want to mention that we are not talking about redeveloping any good stock housing. I mean, we want the houses and the residents who live there and have their home there to continue to live there. They've been very, we've had 4 or 5 of them who've been fairly actively involved in this. So we're not talking about
Right.
We're not talking about taking down any houses or displacing anyone.
Okay.
And these pink dots, as you see here, the identified parcels that are currently vacant. And so we have targeted infill to occupy those particular pink areas where we've identified vacant land. So as Marquette said, the housing, as you can see, remains here. The dark is existing. Here, the dark is new, but what's existing remains in place.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to Paul to walk you through some of the implementation recommendations that are specific to the different areas.
And I'll wrap it up. I mean, what we've done is, as part of the plan, is taken this and, based upon our conversations with the community, have created and also from a planning and implementation process, to try to propose or outline a structure for how implementation, particularly as it relates to public investment, not only the city's investment, other public entities would as well, in terms of near-term projects that are highest priority, so almost a matrix, moderate priority and lower priority, midterm and long-term, in terms of where should the focus be to start the process of encouraging reinvestment and redevelopment or revitalization of the neighborhood. I just want to make one point, and not to walk you through this. And then we took each one of them and broke those down further. We've done an estimated cost and the potential funding source. Is it city? Is it potentially TAD? Many of these funding sources are likely to come from other entities as well. U.S. HUD, as is the case with the housing redevelopment or revitalization, Georgia DOT, among others. So we think that there's a series of funding sources to be brought to bear for each one of these priorities and each one of these investments. I do want to point out one item of all of them, which is Chase Homes. It is the Councilwoman. There is no all of the development in the project is on vacant parcels, right? So everything, with the exception of one case, and that's Chase Homes. Chase Homes, of course, today. It's immediately adjacent to a very large transmission station. So from an environmental justice. So we've been through the planning process in constant conversation with the Housing Authority of what would that look like. And one of the redevelopment opportunities on Bradley Circle, because there is a market opportunity as well, knowing that right now the apartment market is somewhat soft because of the reductions at the Air Force Base. But over the long term, at the Army base, but over the long term, there's projected growth. That there would be integrated mixed income housing, both Chase Home residents and other residents redeveloped around Bradley Circle, which would free up that parcel, which really is a commercial parcel, should have never been developed for housing to begin with, given its proximity to these major power lines and to the rail line, and thinking about that process. So what you've seen on Bradley Circle is actually redeveloping city-owned vacant parcels. It is not redeveloping any existing homes. And so that's just one just for clarification purposes. So we've gone through the process in terms of the implementation, tried to apply some current cost estimates as it relates to what it would would be. And then finally, and this is more for zoning and land development, what's the build-out scenario? Is the opportunity, is the chances are that you're actually going to get 7.7 million square feet of space in City Village? Certainly hope so. It's unlikely, certainly within the foreseeable future. But our expectation is over the long term, you're setting yourself up for a very different area, different neighborhood, certainly than it is today, and a much more healthy and integrated place as it relates to development. And of course, if there's other questions, we appreciate your attention for that through that presentation. Both Grace and I, and obviously AECOM are here as well to be able to take those.
Yes, we have Councilor Huff.
You mentioned the housing piece of Chase Homes.
Yeah.
How many units do we have now, and what are we reducing down to?
There's 103 units.
Now?
103 units in Chase Homes, and the total development of housing that's being proposed is 250 units, at least 103 of which would be as affordable units.
Okay.
So there'd be more
There
affordable
could be more,
units? Okay.
because our sense is that that you'd want a ratio of 70% market to 30% affordable is a healthy. From our experience, and we do a lot of this work all over the country. Our experience is that's a healthy community, healthy mix, and so what we've 250 is a very nice. Is very nice from a market perspective in terms of operationally running units, so that it works out very well. So yes, it could even be more than that, Mayor. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point, I think, as we continue to have this discussion, because a lot of times when you're talking about revitalizing distressed and blighted areas, people worry about gentrification, about pushing out people at lower income levels and lower income housing. And I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time, because some of the best practices that we've seen around this country as we travel on inner city trips is where they've really taken the time to assess the market and assure that either through the construction of the housing unit, they're smaller in size, for instance, but that they are price marked. So either through collaboration with the housing authority or HUD or whatever other partnerships may be out there, or because of the way they're constructed, they attract families and persons of more modest incomes, and you don't end up having some elite high-level, affluent area where you've pushed out everybody. It's a real community, and that tends to be more economically stable than, frankly, going for a sheer of affluent community, because that lasts for a certain period of time, and once it gets a little patina on it, they move out, and then you have issues. So if you address that, and then we've got a couple of counselors that want to speak to.
Sure, and just on that point, especially when it comes to public housing, you may have known from your past experience, HUD did away for many years with something called one-for-one replacement, where you didn't have to replace one unit for one unit of affordable if you relocated public housing residents. That policy is back now in force, so there is a requirement that there must be one-for-one replacement for a public housing unit with another what's a deep subsidy unit, so either public housing or Section 8 project-based unit. So, Mayor, absolutely, and there is going to be a lot of pressure here to not do that mix, and our feeling is because it's easier just to do a market rate development. I mean, at the end of the day, it's easier financing. You don't have to layer as much. It's just all around. At the end of the day, we also agree that this is what, to your point, is this really what makes this a healthy and different neighborhood within the context of Columbus, and so making sure that both the affordable and the market rate are part of this project really set a new standard even within Columbus, even from what your very well-run housing authority, particularly well-run housing authority, has done over the years. So.
Thank you. Wait, back to Councilor Huff, and then others.
Sorry.
So you said we had 103 units presently?
Yes.
Okay. And we're looking at 103, 106 going forward in the 250 mix?
That's of the 250. Yeah.
Of the 250. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. We have Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. I noticed up there, did I read it right or see it right on 2nd Avenue? Were you proposing to, what do we call it, Mayor, road diet?
Oh, yeah.
Second
I don't-
Avenue becoming a
Road
two-lane road?
Yes, and I'll have, Mickey, do you want to? Yeah. We have our ACOM consultants, transportation. We looked at several options for Second Avenue and First Avenue.
That's a state route, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, so we've implemented these road diets on other state routes within the state. And the ADT currently for Second Avenue is within that threshold to where you could incorporate a road diet, still provide for the same amount of capacity, but when you do that, you give the ability to provide for multimodal facilities.
Right, okay. I think there may be, a lot of what we're looking at, you got to have a vision, but I think we'd all agree that a lot of the, future development in this area based on Columbus, Georgia, our Columbus, Georgia, is going to be market-driven. And you know what I mean by that, right?
Was there a question?
No, I mean, absolutely, and it's going to be market-driven, and as you know even better than us, we provide some services to some of the largest private investors in the city. Uptown still has a way to go, right? I think to your point, City Village is going to.
Well, I guess we can, understanding as we go here that we can fluctuate as the markets change or as the markets dictate.
You better be prepared to fluctuate,
good.
right? Because markets do change, and some of this is not. These plans can't be static. It may set some framework, and as you said, a vision, but it's going to end up having to adjust over time. Right?
The other thing I wanted to ask you, is there any reason, just for the sake of the viewing audience out in TV land, and they're looking at this, is there any reason why you wouldn't continue north of 35th Street and include River Mill, or there's an intersection there, help me with the road address there, I want to say, is it 38th, where a lot of people tend to think of that as Bibb City or City Village, but is there any significant reason that you wouldn't expand? I know we have the TADs that are all the way north of the river to the J.R. Allen Parkway. Is there any reason why that wouldn't be a section as well?
No specific reason, except that when the city put out an RFP for procurement for a consultant, those were the identified boundaries. We spoke earlier about filling in the gap, but the boundaries are not fixated. We think that most certainly revitalization is about being able to build on neighboring conditions, be it Bibb Village or to the south with Uptown. So we do think that there's an opportunity for there to be an integrated approach towards any investments that are made in the area.
And the last question I like from a I guess, Mr. City Manager, from a TAD perspective, you could use a TAD essentially as a CID, I believe. I don't think a CID would be appropriate here, but in listening to the presentation, in thinking of some of the things that the city can do or the Alliance can do in the next 5+ years, I think I picked up, you talked about marketing and signage.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Wayfinding.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's something you can tap into right away in marketing the area. That's going to be significant, but couldn't you use possibility that money is that's accumulated in the area that's earmarked for development in the area? Couldn't you use that as a resource to kickstart some of these efforts, whether it's signage or marketing or things like that? Is that possible, Mr. City Manager? Under the TAD regulations?
Repeat. I think it's to superimpose a CID on a TAD.
Well, it wouldn't be doing that. It was just the concept.
You can't have that money discretionary.
Hold on, let me see.
Distributions, you have to have a project.
I'm sorry, I was under the impression, I like the way you're thinking, but I think those things are project specific. And I think that if I heard you right, I don't think we can have a discretionary fund that is built up of TAD monies unless we re-identify another project that would be voted on by this council.
Right. Well, we talked about that. I guess I was just trying to think out of the box a little. We talked about infrastructure a lot, using TAD monies for infrastructure. Is signage infrastructure an aspect
and I
of
certainly think so.
developing
Once,
the area?
Streetscapes, signage, wayfinding signs, all of that, as I understand it,
Right.
would be construction and TAD dollars could be used for that, but it would come to you for approval as a project for the city to use TAD dollars for that specific infrastructure that you have.
And I just pose that as a thought, not
Yeah.
saying that's what's going to happen, but I pose it as a thought, as a possibility to ignite or to kickstart this plan.
Well, Councilman, the reason why it's also a good thing to drill down on and to understand, and it's subject to obviously budget appropriation and annual budget, is let's realize that in city, I mean, let's be realistic. In City Village, the increment in the first couple of years is going to be very, very small. I mean, it's going to take you a while to see any real increment.
We've had believe me, we've had a lot of discussion around that, contradictory to a lot of theory, but we've talked about that. So.
Maybe over the long term, this vision, but it's so to the extent that you need smaller investments to begin the process and the momentum. Looking at things like marketing, which are a lot less money than a road diet for Second Avenue, it's worthy to go down and take a look at the ability to use those funds.
Well, and let me just backstep in closing. What would you propose that we, as a city, or the Alliance, City Village Alliance, can do in the next 5 years to really get things going?
You want to talk to someone?
Before they get to that, Glenn, if you will, just to address your issue about your question about the extending the Second Avenue development, so to speak, I just wanted you to know, and what we were talking about this morning earlier with Councilor Thomas, we are working very closely with the not only with the Regional Prosperity Initiative, but with the Second Avenue Beautification Plan that Sam Welborn is heading up to make whatever we're doing or whatever we're proposing in any way, whether it be a very small beautification of Second Avenue or on up to the road diet, which is obviously way down the road. But we are working closely with them and in alignment. We won't do anything or won't suggest anything for anybody unless it's in alignment with what the plan will be for all of the Second Avenue corridor.
Right.
As y'all have approved that.
What I hear you saying is that's still a work in progress.
It is still a work in progress, very much.
Thank you. That's good.
And we
Thank
do
you,
think
ma'am.
that there are a couple of high priority items that you can do in the near term. One of them is obviously formally instituting this City Village Alliance to oversee implementation and the use of this plan as a roadmap towards the various revitalization activities. Paul mentioned earlier that a high priority is to open up the views towards the river, so looking at clearing the exotic and invasive plants from river parcels is going to be important. Securing potential funding for relocation, again, the redevelopment of Chase Homes, we think can be kind of the start of ground zero of redevelopment within the area. Marquette already mentioned efforts moving forward with continuing to look at Second Avenue. We developed several options. The final option that you see in the plan and that ACOM recommended for road dieting, again, but there were a lot of other options that accompanied that particular proposal. The city continuing to look at acquisition of key parcels for redevelopment, we think is also going to be.
Just on that point, I mean, you may say, wait, acquire key parcels. You just told us that 50% of the parcels are in city ownership. Why would you acquire more parcels? We're talking about a very small number of parcels that are kind of gaps in the tooth to be able to create development sites that are actually marketable. So it's not acquiring large number of parcels. It's one or two parcels here or there. I mean, that's
And another key component is, as you look at these different zones, to consider, and the city carefully look at developing requests for proposals and see what kind of interest there is within the development community. That was something that was discussed in many of our meetings. How do we get development going? And so again, looking at that opportunity through requests for proposals, which is most certainly under a redeveloped Chase Homes, that would be something that the Housing Authority together with the city would look to partner with a developer to be able to redevelop that particular land.
Right. Sure. It looks like that concludes our questions, not that it concludes for today. I'm sure that we'll continue to review these materials and hope to have either you back or certainly the committee back in future sessions to continue to discuss this. But thank you for your work. It's exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, is there something else? Okay. All right. I have one update before we move on to the city attorney's agenda. We handed out this morning, received yesterday, and wanted to just make you aware of the progress that we are having. We sent, as you know, we voted on putting thaw the freeze issue on the ballot and sent it to the state legislature, and the legislative council had questions related to some of the items. Lucy Clifton and Chuck Palmer were good enough to go up and met with the chief legislative counsel as well as one of the assistant legislative counsels for a good while and came up with a consensus proposed ballot that is also attached here. It's much more streamlined. It does, I think, resolve the two issues that one member of our legislative council, legislative delegation brought up, and it will be discussed in our local legislative council. Again, it is proposed, any member of our legislative delegation could propose further amendments. It could be further amendments in committee, and also, I guess, up into the floor. They could make amendments. So wanted to keep you all apprised of where it is as of now. So the three documents you have is what was originally proposed with several items that have now either been streamlined or removed at the request of a member of our delegation. And then also the actual act or bill, if you will, that would be voted on by the state legislature that has that in there. So if you want to take a look, and certainly I know you all have personal relationships with members of our delegation, you certainly feel free to contact them and discuss any questions or issues, but they'll be actively discussing it this week and I'm sure next week too. So thank you. And with that, I guess we'll move on then to our Councilor Thomas, did you have a question related to that or to the your light came on? Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Councilor Huff. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention that we had a schedule of meetings that they put out. I don't know if you wanted me to announce it to somebody this morning for the TAD public information meetings. Richard Bishop left us this morning.
Great. Yes. If you want to rattle those off, and also I hope we get them on CCG TV if they aren't already. But did
City
you,
Manager,
Mr. City Manager, did you want to?
I don't have those with me, but
Okay.
you can either have some.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. It's from Richard Bishop, Uptown Columbus, and it says, you will find below date, time, and location for public information meetings for the River District Redevelopment Plan, tax allocated districts. All meetings will be held at 6 p.m. February 15th, Council Chambers, Citizen Service Center, 3111 Citizens Way, right here in our chamber, 6 o'clock on the 15th. February 16th, Frank Chester Recreation Center, 1441 Benning Drive. February 17th, Shirley Winston Recreation Center, 5025 Steam Mill Road. And February 18th, Northside Recreation Center, 2010 American Way. And this is the follow-up meetings on the tax allocated districts for River District redevelopment plan.
Great. It's good to see those out, and let's make sure we get them on CCG TV and maybe even on our website, Facebook pages, get the word out.
We'll certainly do that, and we'll email that to all of the city councilors, webpage, CCGTV, we'll do that.
Good. And when you get it, if you have a little graphic drawn up, if you'll send it to all of us that have Facebook pages, we can put it up there, and people will. It'll just broaden the crowd that might come. All right. With that, we have Assistant City Attorney Lucy Sheftel sitting in for Clifton Fay, and we'll turn it over to her at this time for the City Attorney's agenda.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and Council. Very short agenda today. The first is a resolution to establish the qualifying fee for the special election to be held in Council District 8 on May 24th, 2016.
Okay. We have a motion and second to approve a resolution for the qualifying fees as stated. We have Councilor Thomas with discussion.
Mayor, I would, excuse me, I would like to ask the Assistant City Attorney to tell us and the community what's going on with this and why we have to come back and do this, if you would.
Yeah, it's
Please.
actually
Certainly.
surprisingly complicated, so yeah.
Yes. Basically, our council general election will be held on May 24th, and we set the qualifying fees at the last meeting for all of those full terms. Because there is another provision of the charter regarding special elections to fill unexpired terms, we have to go through another hoop with respect to Councilor Buck's District 8 spot. It was vacated, as you all recall, by the death of Red McDaniel. Councilor Buck has been ably serving since he was appointed by council. But unfortunately, the charter requires that the next time there is a general election, which is in May for council purposes, there also needs to be a special election to fill the remainder of the term that would have been Red McDaniel's. So essentially, someone is going to have to run for the 6-month term that will be up until the new terms start January 1st.
So because we didn't have a special election at the time but appointed somebody, there will be two issues on the ballot. One, a special election to fill the remainder of the term until December 31 or whatever the swear-in date is. And then there will be a second item on the ballot for that next term.
Correct.
Okay. Councilor Thomas.
Mayor, thank you. I wanted to make sure that those voters in District 8 understand that they will vote in the first list for the term that starts in January. And then, as I understand it, they're going to have to go down the ballot to find the second question about the special election. So for those in District 8, just to be aware that you have to vote twice on both the full term that begins January 1, 17, and then the special election that will that person will take office, as I understand it, just as soon as the election is certified by the election authority, and will serve out then from May 1st to June until January.
And have to pay two qualifying fees.
And have to pay two qualifying
for
fees.
two races. See how easy the rest of y'all that are running have it?
We did prorate the qualifying fee for the shorter term.
All right.
Ms.
It
Board's
appears
decision.
there's no further discussion, so I'm going to cue this item for electronic voting. If you would please, all those in favor, press the green button. If you're opposed, press the red button. Okay, it passes. It did pass. So you can go to your next item.
Our next item is the preliminary authorization of a bond issue for the Water and Sewage Revenue Bonds, Series 2016. We have had many patient officials from the waterworks waiting over there.
We've got a motion for approval, and there's a second. Is there any further discussion related to this item? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'll cue the item for voting. Please indicate your votes electronically. And it does pass. And I want to thank those with the Waterworks, including Steve Davis, who just sat here to hear all the great things going on in the community. So we appreciate your civic engagement this morning. All right. Ms. Assistant City Attorney, is there anything further?
Yes, we will need a short executive session at this point.
Okay. And I understand.
Litigation matters.
Yes. Just so everyone knows, we normally keep our executive sessions at the end so that we don't have to inconvenience those who come to observe the business of the city. However, because of particular time commitments, the only time we could do it is before 12 noon. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to enter into executive session on matters of litigation. And if I could get that motion, please. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye. All right, we're in executive session on litigation matters. If you could clear the chambers, and we think this will be short. I appreciate your patience. All right. We are back from executive session on litigation matters. No votes were taken. And we have one more item related to the Assistant City Attorney, Ms. Sheftel.
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, we have an add-on resolution to approve a damage settlement in the amount of $262,500 with respect to the claim of Patricia Barfield.
And second for approval. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please state aye. Are there any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the City Attorney's agenda, and we'll move now into the City Manager's agenda. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you,
What's
Madam
that?
Mayor.
Well, hold on. I may have, had a mental lapse. Didn't I just say that we have returned from executive session on matters of litigation and no votes were taken? Okay, I'm there. You never know. Okay, go ahead, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I've got a long agenda, so buckle your seatbelts. What's that? I'm requesting approval to enter into an updated MOU between the city and Georgia DOT for the Fort Benning Road Transportation Enhancement Project. The original timeline for this project was construction was to begin in 2014. Because we obviously did not meet this construction date, Georgia DOT is requesting a new MOU with a completion date of June 30, 2019.
Got a motion and second for approval, and we have a question or discussion from Councilor Thomas.
I just have a question, Mr. City Manager. The $500,000, we've already, our 20% match, we've already approved that. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And so this is just to extend the MOU?
That's correct.
No additional funding?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. We have Councilor Woodson.
Judy asked one of them. The other one is, they'll still work on it, and it will be completed by 2019, or they will be starting by 2019?
Well, the construction is scheduled to begin this summer.
Okay, this
And
okay.
for those of watching by television, at Fort Benning Road, Casita Road, Brennan Road, we're going to land Brennan and Fort Benning Road. We're going to do a roundabout, and we're going to do a streetscapes project all the way to the Fort Benning land just before you go through the gates of Fort Benning. That's what this project is about. Did we take the vote?
No, that concludes the discussion, and I'll cue it for voting. Please record your votes electronically. Okay, and it's completed. Thank you.
Next, I've got utilities relocation for the Follow Me Trail. We're asking approval to enter into an agreement with the Columbus Water Works for relocation of utilities near the proposed bridge that will cross over Victor Drive for the Follow Me Trail. The Columbus Water Works informed us that it's necessary to relocate some sewer lines and other construction conflicts on the site.
Got a motion and second for approval of utilities relocation. Seeing that there's no discussion, we'll cue it for electronic vote. You may vote now. And it does pass.
Got requesting approval to execute a 5-year property lease renewal with Tower Development Corp. For the purpose of leasing space at the entrance of Shirley Winston Park. You may know that we already have a cell tower there at that entrance. This is a renewal.
We've got a motion and second for the Shirley Winston Park cell tower lease renewal. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing that there's none, you may record your votes electronically. All right, and it does pass.
This is another cell tower lease renewal, 8889 River Road. This is with T-Mobile USA. The lease renewal amount will increase to $32,850.90 a year, quarterly payments.
We've got a motion and second for approval at 8889 River Road cell tower lease renewal. And seeing that there's no discussion, we'll cue this for electronic vote. You may vote now. And it does pass.
Next, I've got a new lease agreement with the Columbus Sports Council for 5 additional years at the office at Golden Park. It's a $1 a year lease.
Got a motion and a second. Okay. Let's see. We do have some discussion. We have Councilor Thomas.
Again, just a question, Mr. City Manager. This says that they are responsible for the upkeep to include cable and all that sort of thing. Do we pay anything, utilities or any of the other expenses for the?
I believe we pay the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
For the council, that's for the sports.
I believe we pay the utilities for all of Golden Park, and that's correct. Yes.
And they pay everything else. Is
That's
that right?
correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And that concludes discussion. We'll cue it for electronic voting. And it does pass.
I've got a lease agreement for 4505 Buena Vista Road. This is the police precinct at the CB&T Bank at Buena Vista Road. It's the renewal of a $1 a year lease.
We have a motion and second for approval of the lease agreement at 4505 Buena Vista Road. There's no discussion. And I've cued it to vote electronically. One more. Let's see here. We need Councilor Winston. Press again. Okay. And it does pass.
We've got property disposition for vacant property at 3645 St. Mary's Road. This is 0.27 acres plus or minus.
All right, we've got a motion for approval and a second. Any discussion? Councilor Thomas.
Yes, I would like to have the city manager explain this a little bit, if you would, please.
This property is leftover property from the St. Mary's Road road widening project that occurred back in 2007. And so the property is there. There's nothing we can do with it. An adjacent property owner approached the city about purchasing the property, and so because there's nothing we can do with it, we're interested in declaring it surplus and selling it. There are 3 additional property owners around that property that we will make contact with so that they'll know that we're going to advertise it for sale, and they will have an opportunity to share their interest in it, but it's 0.27 acres plus or minus. There's nothing we can do with it. It's just leftover property.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were on. Excuse me.
The map of this, Mr. City Manager, looks like a regular lot. Is that correct? It's a regular,
I
it
believe.
looks like a vacant lot that
Yeah,
they had at
it's-
one point
it's-
had a house on it.
Yeah, it had a house on it, and I think they put a guardrail right there on St. Mary's Road that you can't access it. Pardon?
I don't think it's that side, it's across the street.
Well, maybe I'm on the wrong side of the
When I
street.
was looking at the map, it's between 2 houses,
Okay,
this lot is.
yeah.
But I was gonna ask you about the piece you're talking about, the guardrail, what are we gonna do about that?
Well, we need to do the same thing with that.
Okay. Let's make sure Councilor Thomas is concluded, and then we'll get to Mayor Pro Tem.
But to your question, you says it looks like it's,
It has an address, 3645.
yeah, yeah, but it's a small piece that, yeah, that we can't, that
like a full
there's nothing we
lot.
can,
It was a lot between 2 other residential houses.
mhm.
But I don't know the size of
It just looks like it's in the middle of a residential block,
Yeah,
and that,
And maybe I need to pull the map up, but typically what we do, we offer a portion to adjacent owners. And I'm looking for staff to, yeah.
it looks like somebody's already parking a truck in there.
Yeah, I'm sure they've been using it.
Well, we took
And
the
so
park
it is a
around the street.
buildable lot? Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
What happened was when they did the road
Okay,
widening-
let's get a mic on.
Oh, the mic. When they did the road widening project, they actually acquired the house and demolished it. So there was actually a structure there at one time. The house is just that the land has sat vacant since that time. So that property owner behind it on Ida, they're the ones that's interested in acquiring the property.
3646. Okay.
And so we will notify 36, all of the adjacent property owners touching that property so that they will have an opportunity to express their interest in it as well. Yeah, we're going to advertise it in the newspaper once you allow us to declare surplus. And so builders, anyone can bid on it. It's not a commitment or promise to any of those property owners. But we will take no less than fair market value for the property. And we're not going to appraise it until after you say that we can declare it surplus, because it would make sense to incur the expense of appraisal in advance of declaring it surplus.
I don't have a problem with our selling it. I just wanted to make sure that I knew what we were selling and what it involved and everything. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Mayor Pro Tem.
When we when we put this out for bid, do we take in consideration the money we spent to purchase that property?
Well, it was
There's a possibility we purchased it for more than what it may sell for because the house is no longer on it.
Well-
Structure's no longer there.
well, what we consider is a fair market value, because, it's not likely anyone's going to pay more than the fair market value. If it's a builder, however, and they see that lot and they see that they can get money on the construction side, then they might outbid the adjacent property owners to acquire that lot. So
I mean, there's a possibility that we may not recoup the money we spent to.
there's a very good possibility, because whatever the fair market value is now, I don't know, because we probably bought the house and property. I'm sure we did, and then demoed the house. And so I don't know that the cost of the structure and the land were valued separately. I don't know.
Okay,
But there's nothing we as a city can do with it.
right.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and so we will cue it for voting. You may vote electronically at this time. All right, and it does pass.
I've got a street acceptance, a portion of Pine Ridge Drive, Section 7, Turtle Creek.
Got a motion for approval and a second. And there's no further discussion. It is queued for electronic voting. One more. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Someone stepped out. Excuse me. Okay, thank you. And it does pass.
I've got a $5,000 grant, no match or in-kind required. It's for victim witness assistance.
Got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing that there's none, it is queued for electronic voting. And it does pass.
I've got a 2016 Historic Preservation Fund survey and planning grant. It's up to $20,000.
Got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion related to this item?
Well, and let me just say the required match would be paid by the Facade Board, Historic Columbus Foundation, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, and it is queued for voting. And it does pass.
Got some purchases. The first is a change order. It's change order 3, Councilor Davis, for J.R. Allen off-ramp widening project, Adams Farm Road lane extension, and ramp extension on SR 22 and US 80.
All right, we've got a motion and a second for approval of item A, which is a change order for J.R. Allen off-ramp widening, and it is queued for voting. Please record your votes electronically. It does pass.
Got expansion of Metro's Metro Transit System scheduling and routing software. This is basically for the Dollar Ride, and they've got it on the regular routes. And
all right, we've got a motion and second for approval. There appears to be no discussion. It is queued for voting.
And Madam Mayor, I will say to the Mayor Pro Tem, yesterday I said it was 80-10-10 money, and the report showed 80-20 and went back, and it is 80-10-10. So it's
Okay.
80% federal, 10% state, 10% city.
Okay. Wait a minute. Oh, no. Okay. Whew. Sorry, thought I lost my system. Go ahead.
Okay, I've got a vendor name change for custodial supplies. It's a name change only.
Got a motion and a second for approval of a vendor name change. And you may record your votes electronically. It does pass.
Next, I'm asking you to declare a 1984 model Dodge Van 150 pickup surplus, and
Okay, we've got a motion and second for approval of item D. There appears to be no discussion. It is queued for voting. It passes.
Next, I've got a purchase of stream mitigation credits for South Lumpkin Road, South Lumpkin Multi-Use Trail, and that's the Follow Me Trail. And so we're asking that you authorize me to purchase.
All right, we've got a motion and second for approval. No discussion. It is queued for electronic voting. And it does pass.
Next is a change order 1 for outdoor pool repairs. And
Got a motion and second for approval. There's no discussion. And we will cue it for electronic voting. You may vote now. And it passes. Let's
Yeah.
see, we have Counselor Henderson.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to ask the clerk to record my vote as a positive for items, I think it was everything after the property. I've lost it now. The street acceptances and the, I guess it was, what was it? 8,
Okay.
9, and 10. And the purchases that I missed too, A and B.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we have Counselor Huff.
Madam Mayor, Mr. City Manager, wanted to get you additional information. I came before the body, the council, probably 2-3 years ago. Allied Drive and Caspian and Holly Hills. There's a lot of speeding, and we had talked about speed tables, and we have a waiting list. But I think once I get you additional information, hopefully we can move this up the list. We just had our 3rd or 4th crash into a house. They have put signage up to warn you. They put additional cemented blocks and things in the yard to try to prevent the cars from coming through. But we need the speed tables to slow them down because they're coming through and I don't know what's on their mind, but they're just making that turn. And it's 2 different houses that keep getting hit. So I'll get you additional information and see if we can give them some relief because the houses are insured and everything, but they came real close to a child getting killed this last time when the car crashed the house. So I'll get you additional information. Thank you.
And we will be having a presentation in a minute about the funding related to those types of funds, won't we, Mr. City
well,
Manager?
not speed tables.
Oh, not
but,
speed tables?
yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe that's something we can look at here soon. All right.
Okay, they're telling me that we are going to mention traffic coming.
That's what I thought, that
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about the overall fund and it's
Yeah.
the priorities of council, and we just need to move it around, if we'd like to. Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things I was going to ask the city manager to look into. Ran into a friend of mine that works maintenance out at Bull Creek and indicated that 2 things. One, I think during that huge downpour that we had in December, we lost a dam that is used to retain the water that is pumped to all the greens. And if they don't get the dam rebuilt and restored and start collecting that water back up, they're not going to be able to pump water to the greens, which is not a terrible deal now, but if it goes on more than several weeks, he said they'll lose the greens and then it becomes a significant expense to try to get them back in shape. Also mentioned that during that time they lost all the sand out of the bunkers, I guess, and they also had some wash areas that they needed sand. And he said in the past they've always called and they've had public services, I guess, or public works go and pick it up because they can get the sand. I think he said for $50 if we go get it, but it's like $3.50 if we have to have them bring it. He said they set it up, and I just wanted to check into this. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but it struck me as odd that he said they got another call that said that they were an enterprise fund, so they were not going to be able to provide trucks to go pick that sand up, which, whether they're an enterprise fund or not, if that's true, it's costing the citizens another $250 to $300 a truckload, and there were about 12 to 15 piles of sand out there. He did say it ultimately got taken care of, and I think what they did is they worked it out where they could charge the enterprise fund of the golf courses the cost for man hours and the trucks, which I don't think they've done before, but they had to charge that against their budget, I believe, to go pick that up. If you just check on it,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
'cause
getting it from
I'm
a buddy that's
yeah.
on the maintenance. I don't
Yeah.
doubt him, but I just want to get it checked out because I would hate to think that we use
Well-
the reason that it's an enterprise fund to try to end up costing folks that we represent more money.
Well,
So,
and I certainly, agree with that. So
No,
if they called
I know
me,
you did. That's why I was
maybe I
asking.
could have helped.
Well, I don't think they called anybody. I just bumped
If
into
that's
it.
the case,
It
yeah.
may not, yeah, just check on that if you don't mind.
I will.
Thank you.
With
We've got a
that,
couple more. We've got Counselor Woodson.
City Manager, can we, let me get this right back. Can I put this on a list, or can we verify this? I received a call this morning for resurfacing Broadmoor Drive. It's a major street accessing the public school of Key Elementary. It's really in really bad shape, especially when it's raining. Can we please have someone go look at it and put it on the list to be resurfaced, if it's not resurfaced now? The other question that also Broadmoor and Beatrice Avenue, there's a bus stop there. With all this rain and cold for the kids, is there any way we can see or put on the list for a shelter or something to be done at that school bus stop?
we can take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if that belongs for us to do it or to the school system, but since it's the constituents just asked if we can look into it.
Well, certainly it would have to be a city bus stop for us to put a shelter there. And so you're saying it's where school kids are catching the bus.
Mhm. But could you double check it
We'll
and
check,
see?
'cause
And
it
then
could-
if, let's say it is, can we send something to the school system then, asking them if they can just look into it, that it was a concern sent to us,
Yeah. We'll,
but it's out of our
yeah.
jurisdiction? And then, I'm not sure if I should publish the gentleman's name, but I can give it to you and his phone number, and then we can follow back up with him.
Sure.
Because I didn't ask permission to publish his name, so I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we have Counselor Davis.
City Manager and Madam Mayor, I'd like to just share a report real quick on some of the employees that you're responsible for, and Mayor, you're responsible as well. I'd like to publicly thank and show appreciation, express appreciation to Deputy Director Pam Hodge, Donna Newman, Doc Dorsey. Mike King was also very instrumental, and I know there may be some others under them that helped as well, but they did an outstanding job last night at a public meeting, and it was their help was invaluable. Madam Mayor, the police chief and members of his command staff were there too, and I want to really thank them as well for taking time out of their busy schedule, and we all know how busy they are. And Councilor Thomas, Councilor Allen, thank you for being there as well and helping and assisting. And I thought it was a very good meeting last night. So I just want to give you
Great.
yeah. So the staff did a great job.
Thank you.
All right.
With that, Madam Mayor, I've got a number of updates, and the first is from Public Works Director Pat Biegler. She's going to talk about facilities maintenance.
Good afternoon. Yes, it just creeped past noon. You all have basically set a policy that if we are going to exceed our budget, the department head has to come in and talk to you. And I need to let you know today that in the facilities maintenance budget, I am going to be over budget this year. Thank you. Appreciate that. Within the general fund portion, and if you remember, we have 4 different funds in Public Works. Facilities is part of that general fund. We have 2 line items. One is for other building maintenance and repair, and then we have a line item for facilities maintenance operations. In the other maintenance and repair, we have accounts basically set up to spend on buildings, Parks and Recs building, and generally $140,000 is budgeted, and we've been able to, within the last few years, by careful management, stay within our budget. Public safety has been about $185,000 in it, and then the general building maintenance, general government has $600,000 in the budget. Unfortunately, what we're experiencing is a lot of building Now, this is not doing things like carpeting and painting. This is repairing leaking pipes and replacing heating and air conditioning systems, fixing elevators over and above the regular contracted work. And as of December, in Parks and Rec, we had already spent 80 of the 140,000, leaving us only 60. In public safety, we have already spent the full 185, and in general government, we've spent 410 out of the 600. Just to let you know, our facilities, as you know, are aging. We have 922 facilities in these 3 accounts that we maintain. Most of them are small, but nonetheless, there are that many facilities we take care of. In Parks and Rec, we have something like 480 facilities, and while they do some of the day-to-day maintenance, any larger repairs are done by Public Works and paid for out of this account. Public Safety has 38 buildings, police precincts, fire stations, the Public Safety Building, and in general government, we have 404 facilities that we maintain with the funds that are in that budget. We've got major concerns. This is just halfway through the year, and we're seeing some things come down the road that caused me to believe that I should come and talk to you and make you aware of what's going on. We're going to have issues with outdoor pools when we bring them online. The Aquatic Center was added to our list of buildings without any addition to the budget, and we've been doing quite a bit of maintenance over there. We've got an event coming up, I think at the end of February, beginning of March, and we don't have a lot of money to take care of that. We have one pump, for example, that we just replaced the shaft in for over $10,000, and if I wanted to replace the entire pump, I would be literally spending the rest of the money in that account for the rest of the year. And one of the things we deal with on a regular basis is vandalized bathrooms, the ones that are out there, in public parks and other places. And some of them we go out and repair every month, every week. And people are tearing things off the walls and breaking things, so we have to go back out. We are not to the point where we're putting up out-of-order signs, but we really don't want to get to that point if we can help it. In public safety, the 3 worst roofs in the city, and we got some really bad roofs, are all fire stations. The jail HVAC continues to be a problem, especially in the summertime, and we get calls from over there, advising us that it's hot, and they're concerned about the inmates causing problems when they get too hot and uncomfortable. And we have kind of continuous problems with the hot water heaters there.
This evening, I was over at Shirley Winston Park recently, and they are having leaking.
Major problems, yeah. In general government, the HVAC at the annex is starting to go, and we're having to do something about that. Of course, in the government center, we have perpetual problems with people being too cold and too hot. That system is not very adaptable, and we continue to see increased occasions of leaking pipes because the whole system is old. That being said, I tried to do an estimate of the shortfall based on what we've spent in past years, and I believe what we're going to end up with is coming up close to $350,000 short. I have looked through the budget very carefully. There is not another place to take it. I will continue to look closely at the budget, and if I can find a way to free up any money, I'll do some moving around. But we are going to exceed the budget this year. There's just no question about it. What I need is your approval to continue to exceed the budget with the understanding that I will not do anything that's not absolutely necessary. But I can't hang an out-of-order sign on the jail. There are buildings we have to take care of and things we have to take care of, and we will continue to look for any other source of funds we can. But I wanted to let you know that we are having these kind of issues, and we're in that kind of state in our budget already.
It's council's pleasure.
Well, and of course, I was going to say, she needed to come back because as we require of others, when we see that we're going to exceed the budget, we come back and get your okay to do that. And as she said, we won't do anything that's not absolutely necessary. And what we'll be doing between now and the end of the year is look for monies in other line items that will allow us to not exceed the bottom line budget. But that might not be possible. But if at all possible, that's what we'll do. And but if we get to that point at the end of the year that we're exceeding, you will know that we needed money for facility maintenance.
Councilor Thomas.
Ms. Bigler, when I worked in the mayor's office a number of years ago in the government center, the joke was if anything went wrong, it was the chiller. If the light bulb went out, it was the chiller. So some of these are repetitive kinds of things. My question is, in looking at the budget that you currently have, and then the kinds of things that you are spending that money on, the kinds of things you're doing, how does this year so far compare with last year, for example? I know that we typically have vandalized bathrooms. That happens all the time and has been happening since we built the first bathroom. And so is it more this year? Is it just more costly? What is the reason?
It is more this year. We've had major breakdowns. We had the sump pump in the basement of public safety building that, essentially flooded the whole basement. We've just had one kind of major thing after another. We are generally, by the time we have not gone over the budget in past years. We've stayed within budget and we've moved money around within the various accounts. Right now, I've got bills for public safety that I cannot pay because that account is empty. I can take it away from general government, for example, and usually at the end of the year, we shift a lot of things around and we usually run out short on public safety and parks and rec, but we will use anything else that's left over toward the end of the year. But the fact that I'm at zero for public safety at this point in the year means, and we haven't spent it on frivolous things. I haven't even spent it on large repair projects. It's just a matter of taking care of those things that are just so busted that we have to make a major investment. So I'm way ahead of the normal expenditures for the year. And while I can pinch a few pennies in some of the other line items, if I only have 140, say, left in general government for the rest of the year, if I move it to public safety, then a month from now I'm going to be back saying I need money for general government. So I thought it was very, very, very necessary to come tell you because there have been more breakdowns. The facilities are older. They need a lot more attention. We've done one or two roofs in the last few years since I've been here. But we've got major, major roofs across the city, both in public safety, general government, and in Parks and Rec that we haven't fixed and need to be replaced. So when they hit that kind of ultimate failure where we've got to do a full replacement and we're starting to hit that with some of these components, we're going to be over this year. There's no question in my mind.
So at this point, I'm not sure exactly what you're recommending, Mr. City Manager. Are you recommending that she do some of this moving around in these budget areas at this time and then come back to us later if there's more money needed, or are you asking us today for $350,000?
I am not asking you today for $350,000. We want you to be on notice that she's going to exceed, and you acknowledge that we've told you that she's going to exceed her budget. And if we are able to move things as we progress through the end of the fiscal year that will balance, that we won't exceed her bottom line, we'll do that. But just know that there's a very good chance that we won't have money in those other line items, and there's a very good chance that she's going to exceed her budget. But facilities maintenance is the critical area at this point that we need you to be on notice about, that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe, and Pam, you can correct me, that I do need your approval to go over the budget in line items such as public safety, so that we can continue to make repairs on that. Otherwise, we cannot continue to make repairs on public safety buildings. And understand, it's been a very tight budget last year and the year before, extremely tight because we've taken a lot of cuts over the last few years in that arena. So I don't feel that we're going to be able to get through the year without going over.
Well, and that's whether it's in the public safety or general government.
Absolutely.
We're going over, and that's right.
That's correct.
We know it's going to be soon because we're already out of money in public safety facilities, and so it's going to happen. And I don't think we need a vote. We just need you to acknowledge that it's going to happen.
All right, we have a few more counselors in queue. We have Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, I acknowledge it. But I want, Ms. Beagle, if you can bring us a list of roofs that needs repairs and estimated costs, because that disturbs me when we build facilities, and I know 10 years is a long time. The buildings are older, but when they're leaking, that doesn't help it at all.
I'll be happy to provide a list.
Okay, we have Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Bigelow, I just wanted to ask you, is your department, are you bringing in more or less revenue than you have in the past?
More.
You are?
We raised...
Across the board?
Across the board. We raised the fees last year for animal control. Within the general fund, I only have basically 3 of my divisions that are general fund. The rest are other kinds of funds. And facilities has no fees, and animal control is the only general fund operation that has fees, and we raised those fees last year.
How about with the recycling center? Are you bringing in more revenue with the recycling center?
At this point, we're holding pretty even. The recycling we're collecting is higher, and we're in a downturn, like with diesel fuel costs. We've hit a downturn in the market. It's a volatile market, so we're pretty even with last year. I have a presentation that we'll get to and work in, but it's holding even.
Wait a minute, I didn't get that. It's a downturn market. You mean you should be saving more? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
diesel?
No.
Because diesel's pretty cheap these days.
Diesel's gone down, but also the price of plastic has gone down, the price of paper has gone down. Last year, we averaged about $125 a ton overall. This year, we're down to $89. So what we're collecting, we're getting a lower price for.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And Pat, I apologize that I had to step away for a moment, but I don't think you've touched on this. It's interesting to me, this was, I guess, the first I fully appreciated that your budget subsidizes other budgets set. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just saying that that's new information to me. So that when we set the police department's budget or the sheriff's budget or the general government budgets, that they're actually being further enhanced by monies from your budget. And I just wonder, and maybe this is more something for Pam, should we not have the budgets be all-inclusive, or is that, where we have for every department a maintenance budget, or is this just the way that accountants do it and the way it should be done?
Well,
My personal belief is some of that needs to remain in our budget, because what we don't need to do is, if the air conditioner goes down in the jail and we need to move quickly to get that changed, whatever, if we have to go to public safety or to the sheriff's office and ask for funds, and we could spend a lot of time going back and forth, and I think that there needs to be some efficiency there. So that we can respond promptly in real emergencies.
And there is a distinction if it's an enterprise fund, for example. Public Works does have a budget within the Civic Center to handle maintenance of the Civic Center. Same thing with Metra. There's a Public Works budget within the Metra fund to handle any repairs and maintenance for Metra. But these would be general fund type of facilities. So it's just the way that we've decided to handle Public Works within the city of Columbus, is that it's the responsibility of Public Works to maintain the facilities, and the entities that are within the facility is not responsible for the maintenance. But we can have discussions about.
Well,
doing
I
something
want to do
different.
what's appropriate, obviously, from an accounting and recording and classification of, of accounts standpoint. I just wondered. I could understand if it was new and not reoccurring, but something that's just the general maintenance of that department, I thought maybe should be. And also that would explain the enterprise fund related to the golf course. It was a matter of where they were going to put the expense, I guess. Is that what the issue was?
That's correct.
Okay.
And additionally, the initial request was right after the flooding, and we had everyone on the Public Works staff down trying to clean up the Riverwalk.
Yeah.
And we were basically saying, we can't right now. We have to establish priorities, and the Riverwalk needed attention pretty promptly. So.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Well,
Thanks.
and the other thing, too, I've talked to staff, I guess, a couple of weeks ago at my department head meeting, mayor and council, about utilities. And that's an area that I want to make the department heads outside of the government center and city services center and annex more conscious of, and that's when you leave the building, turn your lights off and do all these other things that can help us reduce our utilities. And because it's all in the Public Works budget, I don't think they're as conscientious as they could be about conserving energy in those buildings. And so if that expense was charged to their budgets, it would make them more mindful, because organizations like the Civic Center Civic Center did a good job reducing their utilities, I think, by more than $100,000 because of certain things that Ross put in place related to utilities. And David Bevins has done something similar at the Trade Center. And so in some of these buildings, these out units from the government center, and we need to do it within the government center, but if it's not coming out of your budget, then you're not as concerned maybe about doing those extra things to kind of get your utility bill down. So that's one thing we've been talking about.
All right.
If there are no other questions, what we will do is, now that you know that money has to be spent on facilities, when Director Biegler gets to the point that she is going to exceed the bottom line of her budget, then we're going to come back to you and ask for approval to exceed the bottom line, and it'll be based on facilities or whatever else that has caused us to get to that point. And so we don't need any action today.
All right.
All right. Next, I've got a technology update from Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge. And IT Director Forrest Choley will be assisting with this.
Good afternoon. I'll go ahead and get started. She's passing out a copy of the presentation. This is really a collective update from the HR Director, Hollowell, and Director Tolley from IT, just to let you know where we're at with finance, payroll, budget, and HR system, and what our future plans for this system is, and why we're at this point, and what the request of council will be. Our current system is kind of broken out into pieces. We're currently not fully integrated with all of the different components of finance, HR, payroll, and budget. We're really on kind of three separate systems. Finance, which includes accounting, purchasing, accounts payable, fixed assets, accounts receivable, is on version 3.7. The current version is 3.10. So we are behind in upgrades of the system for finance, which is the most advanced of all the systems in this group. We're operating off of a server that was purchased in 2003, and that makes us a little nervous that this server is beyond its useful life, and so we're going to present some options of what we can do to make sure that we stay current and also productive. Budget is on a version 5.40, which is called BRASS. This particular version of our budget software has completely changed. It's no longer BRASS. They're now using performance budgeting, so we're definitely behind in the budget preparation software. Payroll and human resources is on version 2.3.2. Again, the current version, the same as finance, is 3.1. This is actually operating off of the mainframe. So for those of you who can remember kind of the green screens, that's how payroll and HR operates. And the critical issue really is that the finance server is well beyond its useful life. A new server would require us to upgrade to the latest version of 3.1 because the current version that we're operating on of 3.7 will not be compatible with a new server. Again, functions aren't integrated between the different components of our system, and Forrest Toley has come to you several times about the plan for IT and to move all